Alright, so here I am once again working on these drawers for the Geo Pro. I'm going to review what I've learned so far about these drawers. If you get a Geo Pro, you can just cut right to the chase and take care of these things. Right now these drawers have about 20,000 miles on them, and a lot of little things I had to change just to keep them from falling apart. So first, the rails are pretty weak. So I changed them out with actual real drawer rails. When you take the old ones off, just measure them, go down to Home Depot and get some that are the same length, but these are a lot thicker. They have better bearings that slide through, the whole works. They do have somewhat of a locking mechanism. It's not as good as the locking mechanism that comes with the drawers already. However, the locking mechanism that comes with the drawers already is still not even good enough. So it doesn't really matter, you're gonna have to do other things. So, the other thing you're going to want is this. I use this now. It's Loctite Extreme Glue. Do not use liquid nail. I started out using liquid nail. To cut to the chase, liquid nail dries hard and all the flexing and movement will just cause it to crack loose. This glue is more pliable, I guess is the word, more flexible, and switching to this has proven to be a lot more effective. Once you glue it, it seems to stay, and all the vibration and stuff doesn't seem to crack it loose. So the first thing you want to do is change these screws out to longer screws. Now admittedly they do come through a little bit here, but the ones that Rockwood use are just way too short. They don't hardly even go through this wood at all. So just go with new screws a little bit longer and glue them in. And the same thing goes for when you actually put the rail in the cabinet. Again, use bigger screws and glue them in. So the actual cabinet where the drawer sits. So that's the first thing. The other thing I did was I added these little locks, which you've probably seen before. I'll show you when I go into the camper. Here's from the other side. Those are what I use to help accommodate for the fact that these don't have as strong of locking mechanism. However, I still didn't stop there, and I will show you that once I take this drawer back into the camper. One other thing I did is I just put a block here. You could just use washers, and again I use that same glue to hold this in. The reason why is from this direction, every time you would stop, the drawer would shift like this a little bit, and then when you accelerated it would slide back and it would hit the clamp that hits on it and would just beat it to death. In short, basically with these drawers, to get any life out of them at all, you're going to want to improve the rails that they use, make sure to use longer screws, glue the screws in, and improve the latching, which there's still more involved in that, which I'll show you once I go back into the camper. However, at the 20,000 mile mark roughly, they start to fall apart in a different way. As you can see here, they're all just stapled together with these really just pretty weak staples. And so I'm going to pull these three out that came loose, and I'm going to put some glue in right here where it started to come loose. And I am going to take these screws I picked up at the hardware store, number 6 screws by 3 1/4 inches long sheet metal screws. And I am going to take these and I'm going to screw 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 screws on each side, and then I'm going to use another set of these screws for the other drawer. In addition to these, they're going to be glued. So right out of the bat you should do the same, because these drawers all in all are going to be okay once you improve the rails and reinforce where these are stapled together. I think these drawers will actually last you a long time built how they are. The rest of the drawer is pretty solid. It really is. It's not flexing, it's not squeaking, it's actually not bad. But these are things that should just probably be done right out the door, just so that it's nice and sturdy and never has a chance to get weak to begin with as you're driving down the road. like I say, I think that's going to be pretty good. The staples alone lasted 20,000 miles. So I think even now, because there was still some staples holding, and I glued where it came up, I think it'll be fine. But basically I put these across here and they're glued in as well, and it doesn't come through. It's a nice thick, you know, 1/2 inch plywood here, so you had plenty of grip there. Alright, so there I go. It's not perfectly pretty, but you know, honestly, it's not like you see this. And so, like I say, if you do this before the drawers even had a chance to fall apart, and I put glue on each one of those screws before I put them in. I got a little sloppy with the glue again, but you know, it's not like you see it. So I think that, you know, structurally these have lasted 20,000 miles as far as this part. I think it'll be good for a little while longer. This whole thing here is supported by this very flimsy piece of panel board, which is held to the back with one screw, and he's changed. So something you want to look at when you even get your camper brand new. You probably should just look at reinforcing this stuff right off the get-go. So I've got to fix that. Also, it looks like they have a little support block that was supposed to go under the pipe here, so I've got to fix this because there's nothing really supporting this pipe. Also, for whatever reason, not sure why, this is pulling away. I don't even feel a screw back there. I feel like a little slot back here where they would run a screw. I don't think they even have ever put a screw. So, yeah, good job, guys. There's no screw. There was never a screw. So I've got that shouldn't be a big deal. I'll want to run a screw in the little slot they have back here to fasten that into there. But you know, I'm almost thinking I want to pull this whole stove out because this whole thing is falling apart. So there you go. That's what you get. 20,000 miles and expect to have to pull your stove out and remanufacture it all. There were just 2 screws on each side, right here and right here. I pulled those. I did pull some of these out that were holding this, but some were missing. And then there was one missing down here. On this side was already missing, and I pulled this side. There's enough hose here that I don't actually have to disconnect it. That should give me enough room to work in here and reinforce all this and clean things up. So what they did is, when they put this together, they ran staples through this piece of wood all the way through, and originally it fastened to the piece of wood that is now fallen. It's underneath here. So these little staples were supposed to be stuck in the piece of wood that's on this, and so that's how they really expected this to all stay together. So yeah, it may not take a lot to fix, really, just using appropriate size fasteners, like screws instead of staples for one, and ones that are also long enough to fit all the way through. I just got to pull these staples out because they clearly didn't even line up where they're supposed to be and went into nothing. So basically this was never attached is the problem. So, and you can see they never even put the screws in here. Alright, so let's start first. Let's start with the easy project. This, I was able to pull the pipe up a little bit so that it can meet. And I've got some of this tape here, this ducting type tape. It's the actual like aluminum tape. I'm going to wrap that around it and get it all taped up. Hopefully that should be good enough. I really don't want to have to deal with replacing that, because if this will work, why go through that work? So I'm going to just do this. Alright, that seemed to work just fine. That was an easy fix. I think that'll be just fine. So now to this. Alright, so I can push it up above where it needs to be. And I think what I'll do is I'll drill pilot holes through here, all the way through to the wood that's underneath this. And then I'll put screws all the way through with glue so that this will become, as it was intended, a solid connection to this. I still really think that's a lame way of doing it, but we're supposed to be heading out here next week, and I really don't have time to redesign all this. It did last 20,000 miles put together like crap, so if I put together halfway decent, it should be okay. All the other things I've reinforced in the past, like this, it had one screw holding this, so I put two. I put this with a real screw holding that, which they didn't even have a real screw there. They had it stapled. Those seem to be pretty. This sheared up pretty solid and has been pretty solid for, you know, almost 8 to 10,000 miles. So I use this to drill my pilot hole, but just one screw, look at this, just one screw securely fastened all the way through to this side. One screw. Look at this. Look what just one screw done correctly. Look at that. So I'm going to put, I think 3 screws here. So 1, 2, 3, and then I'll do 3 on the back side, and then I'm going to use probably 3 or 4 up on this back piece here. I think that will do it. I still need to glue it, and I'm about out of glue, so I'm not sure how that's going to work. I ordered 2 more sticks, but you can get this on Amazon from their UK store, which will ship to the US. They didn't have it before, but they have it now. I really am liking this glue. I really genuinely have liked this glue so far. Originally, I was all behind using liquid nail because I've always used liquid nail, but it just doesn't work in a camper environment. There's too much shaking going on. But this Loctite stuff has really worked well for me in comparison. For this kind of environment where there's a lot of vibration, this Loctite Extreme has worked really well. Check it out on my store, thejohnnyoshow.com/promotions. You will find my affiliate link for this to my Amazon store. I would definitely recommend having a couple of these. So far, this is what I'm sticking with. I haven't found a reason to switch from it. I'm very happy with it so far. So anyway, this looks like some things that when you get your Geo Pro, you're going to want to check all this. And I would just, like I say, I would just take care of this stuff right out the door. I guarantee you, or you know what, better yet, don't buy a Geo Pro. But if you got stuck with a Geo Pro, check all this stuff because it's going to fall apart on you and you're going to need to go back and fix it. So it's better to fix it before it completely falls apart and causes more damage. Like I say, this isn't, they literally didn't even put the screws in the back side of this. It's got the little inset back here for a screw, but they didn't put one. It's got 2 insets for screws and they never put screws at all. So that needs to be fixed. Alright, so the sheetrock screws weren't quite long enough to really get a good grip, but now I've got a nice solid grip all along this edge, all the way through. I changed to these guys. A note on this thing in the back, I did add some screws, but it's not structural. There's nothing behind this panel board here. There's no framing, there's no nothing. It's everything Rockwood does is they literally think this 1/8 inch thick panel board is structural. That's their mindset. They literally, for example, the inverter is fastened to nothing but this 1/8 inch thick panel board. That big, heavy 1,000-watt inverter hanging in the closet. That's all it's screwed to is this. There's nothing behind it to keep it secure. So that's just how Rockwood does things. Be aware of that. So anyway, these screws, they only had 1 screw. All it does is just keep this from flopping around. I went ahead and added 3 more because that one pulled out because there was no real support here. So when this moved, it ripped it out. But these screws in the back, they don't really do anything. They just keep this from flopping around, but it's nothing structural. It doesn't serve a purpose. But I went ahead and put those in there anyway just to keep it from flopping around. So this is all secure. I do need to run the 2 screws in the back that they never put in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up all this and put the stove back in, clean up the stove. It looks like we had some dog food sitting on top of it that bounced out and fell into the stove. So I'm going to get all this cleaned out, The drawers are ready to put back in, and then I'm going to work underneath in here once I get my workspace cleared up. So I'm going to get all this clean first and then go on to the next step. Oh, I almost forgot. I got to fix that block, because otherwise that pipe is just hanging in the air and nothing really supporting it. Well, that's not perfect. I've got glue under it and I started to run the screw through and the drill got caught in a way that trigger was being pressed and I couldn't stop the drill, so I ran it in a little far and it started to split the piece of wood. But the important part is that wood is not actually going to go anywhere, and it is solid enough that it should keep the pipe from ever. I mean, it's a solid foundation. It needs enough for the pipe not to fall down. But yeah, I kind of screwed up my piece of wood. But there is glue underneath holding it, and it didn't actually split it. It kind of just split it on the, it kind of just split away on the outer edge, not all the way through. So it's still solid. It just wasn't my intention to kind of obliterate it. So that's fixed. But now you can see with it all fastened together now, look how solid that is. It's never been that solid, and I didn't realize until I took this stove out, it was because they've never had this on a solid footing all the way through. Again, it wasn't really fastened to this, which is needed to create that, what would you call it, lateral support? Is that what that's called? I'm not sure if that's the right word or not, but look at that, that's solid. So in all honesty, it was just easier to drill a hole big enough. So I drilled a hole with a bigger bit, just big enough that this head can go in there. And then I just used the longer screw and set it in like that with a longer screw. That was easier than trying to reach under there and get to that. So it's now fastened. That's probably good enough considering it was never fastened at all before. So, all right, so that's taken care of. All this is clean behind under here. I still have to clean the actual stove. So I discovered a new issue after snugging this all down and actually getting it nice and secure. The drawer now doesn't seat correctly. So I'm gonna have to put spacers in the rail. I thought it was this messing up, but it's not. I can put that back on once I'm done. The drawer is not seating right. The rail is not at the right angle now. So it's pulled too far back like this, so I need to bring it out like that. So among other things, I need to fix this. This was apparently never fastened. I just ran a screw right here because this kept popping off. I mean, look at that. So I got to figure out what to do with that. But to this wall, the board behind this, I don't see any screws or staples or anything. And this has always been loose like this, and this has always been popping off. So I'm just running some screws. There does seem to be something structural behind this area, so I am running screws here in this to connect it to the wall. You can see it back there, and I'm just basically running some screws to connect it to the wall because it was never fastened to the wall. So I just had to put 3, and fortunately there is something solid that it's fastening to there. So that's a plus. However, you can see here, it's not even fastened on the bottom at all. I ended up putting 5 washers back here, and that gapped that out. And then I had a piece of, this is that vinyl trim. It's made out of vinyl instead of wood, because this wood, that hole was getting pretty well from putting the screw in and out of this wood so much. It really didn't hold anything anymore. It wasn't like broke, but the hole was rounded out. So of course I put glue on each washer, glued the washers in place because that glue will hold, and then I ran the screw through. I put glue between the vinyl trim and the wood trim, and then I ran the screw all the way through into the vinyl. So the vinyl basically acted like a big giant nut. So that is now secure. Put this back on. Everything else inside is done. So let's go ahead and put the drawer in and see how it does. There we go. Much better. Now, I did notice that this was starting to get pushed back a little bit as well. So I bought me some smaller washers, and it looks like I need 1, 2, 3, 5 of these guys. I'm going to glue them together, and I'm going to glue them in place right back here. But that'll keep this thing from moving at all. When the drawer moves, it'll just make it so this thing doesn't get beat all to smithereens like what I had to do on the other, because it was getting beat up until I put a spacer in. So I'm going to glue these all together and put them in place right there. All right, so that's all glued in place. Like I say, hopefully it'll stay together and stay in place like the block I put on the other side, but that'll keep this from getting smashed because it won't bend. So if the drawer shifts at all, it'll keep that solid. So that should help. It did help on the other side. All right, I got my 3/4 inch number 6 machine screws, in here on the bottom like I did on the other drawer, so that's all reinforced. Put it in place. Like I said, there you go. The drawers are all reinforced. Good locking mechanisms. And putting the spacers, made it so that lines up right. Fastened everything inside. So, yep, I'm done with that. I wanted to get white finishing like screws, but all I had at Walmart was these number 8 1/2 inch screws, which is fine. I'm going to put some along the bottom here neatly to just hold this. It'll be good enough. It maybe won't look perfect, but I don't care at this point. There, it's not perfect. You know, maybe I could just touch up the heads with white paint or something. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Put some caulk here, but I mean, it's good enough. I mean, it'll work. No one's gonna care. If I don't care, I know no one else is gonna care. So there, that's fastened. I need to clean this floor. Oh, and this is another thing I discovered, is this lip is coming loose. It's just double-sided tape that holds it on. So I'm gonna peel it off, clean it up, and then I gotta get me some more 3M tape so I can fix it. Yeah, so that's just fastened with double-sided tape. So, ew, grossy. So I'll clean all this off, get me some more double-sided tape, and fix that. And you know what? Being as I'm doing all this, maybe I should take this off and paint it while I'm at it. Alright, I got some double-sided tape. Unfortunately, Walmart didn't have a like 1/2 inch. They had more like what looks like a full inch. So it's too big, obviously, so I'll have to trim it down. But I could have probably ordered something off Amazon that was the right size, but I don't have time to wait for it. So I'm going to trim this down. I've got the top all cleaned. So, and I got this painted. I sanded it a little, lightly sanded it, and then painted it again with flat black, just to make it look a little better. So I'll put that in place here. And I also bought some organizers, which I'll show you in a moment. I think it's looking pretty good. Everything is, you know, some longer screws with glue, all cleaned. The sink is as clean as it seems to be coming. I guess I could use like a Brillo pad or something to get it better. Here's what I've done for organizing. Now a lot of these are empty, but I put the silverware stuff in this. Don't waste your time with one of these. It's just going to bounce out all the time. So I put all my silverware in here. I put things like corkscrews and peelers and pizza cutters and stuff like that in there. We had more of these, but they got lost apparently. But, you know, little things. These all fit. They're empty. Hand sanitizer wipes, Ziploc bags. I mean, whatever. It's just, but as you can see, we never really, there's not a lot in here. There's not a lot in here. That's about it. And then this will clear the pipe down the center here by putting it like this. These actually fit, except for they kind of rub against this until it's closed. Once it's closed, they're way up here, so it's not like they're hitting it when you're traveling, but it does kind of rub while you're opening and shutting. But it doesn't prevent it. So I put these in because when I was cleaning all this, I noticed like silverware all behind the cabinet that had jumped out and stuff like that. So I'm hoping this will help organize this drawer. And then on this drawer, longer things, you know, are here. Aluminum foil. I've got a container here with nothing in it, but so, I mean, that's the extent of what's in these drawers. It's not like they're overfilled. But that should help keep them a little more organized during travel. So I got to continue cleaning. One other thing I did to organize was in other videos you've probably seen, I had all the stuff in one big box. I decided to separate it out to two boxes. So the top box, I have just stuff for setting up camp, like my torch, barbecue stuff, extension cord, you know, not important stuff, but stuff that might be used once you're camping. You know, that's what's in the top box. And then the bottom box is all kinds of repair stuff. So I put the less used tools and assorted stuff, like there's some wires from my Battleborn batteries, which I probably never need, but I have them there. Here's my siphon hose for my generator, so I can run the generator off the 3-gallon tank that's on the front of the camper. You know, just big things like that. Some, you know, Gorilla Tape and caulking and stuff, but stuff that I don't use a lot but it's a little bigger. Here's the 3 things I use for sewer. I've got my clear 90 degree, I got my adapter, and then I got my 60 feet of pipe with all their adapters already under here. And then I took all my little tools that I use more often, you know, level, screwdrivers, small vice grips, stuff like that. The small tools that I generally use a lot more are right there. And then instead of using coffee cans, I got this clear container and I put all my miscellaneous hardware, which is really handy. I save everything. It saved me from having to go to the hardware store many of times. So that all fits there. So this is the tool chest and this is the camp setup chest. So I'll put these back in. It'll be a lot easier to dig through this stuff. It's a little easier to deal with. And like I say, all the barbecue stuff is also in here. Like you can't see it, they're like the spatulas and stuff like that. So, you know, all barbecue stuff, related stuff like that's in there too. So there we go, that's that. So we're going to slide these in. I used to have enough room to store this also in the big box. While it won't fit in the box anymore, I can just set it up there. So there we go. If I had another toolkit of some sort, it would fit up there too. So that, I mean, that I think that's the only adjustment. Otherwise, the way I've have this all organized, which if you search my channel, you'll find organizing your RV basement space or pass-through space. You'll see how I laid all this out, but this is the only change I've had to make. Otherwise, I've been really happy with how I've organized all this. So just changing this to 2 crates instead of 1. All right. Now I got to clean up the mess I made while I was working on all this. I don't do well in confined spaces.